Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Today, the Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt told Parliament that while thousands of doctors were out on strike yesterday, a take-it-or-leave-it offer was put to the British Medical Association. They rejected it tonight. Doctors say the contract is flawed and they will fight on. In a moment, we'll hear from the Health Secretary. But first, our health and social care correspondent Victoria MacDonald has this report.
Just 4 hours after the junior doctors' strike had finished, the Health Secretary unleashed what he had once referred to as the nuclear option. At 11:55 this morning, he stood up in the House of Commons and told MPs he was taking the advice of the government's chief negotiator.
He has asked me to end the uncertainty for the service by proceeding with the introduction of a new contract that he and his colleagues consider both safer for patients and fair and reasonable for junior doctors. I have therefore today decided to do that.
It was, in effect, making history. Never before has a junior doctor's contract been imposed. For Labour, Heidi Alexander accused him of, in effect, becoming a recruiting agent for Australian hospitals.
What we have heard from the Secretary of State today could amount to the biggest gamble with patient safety this House has ever seen. He has failed to win the trust of the very people who keep our hospitals running, and he has failed to convince the public of his grounds for change. Imposing a contract is a sign of failure. It's about time the Secretary of State realised that.
This is a dispute that has now been going on for 3 years, almost to the day, and it has led to 2 unprecedented strikes. The latest offer presented to the British Medical Association on Tuesday night does appear to make concessions. Those working 1 and 4 weekends or more will receive a 30% pay premium. The basic pay increase will now be 13.5%. They had been offered 11%. And the maximum number of hours that can be worked will fall from 91 to 72. But the main sticking point remains, and that is Saturday working. The government says normal hours will be from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. The BMA, however, emphatically rejected the contract and raised the spectre of more industrial action.
We were always hoping the government wouldn't come to imposition, but unfortunately they've taken this very damaging course of action. What we need to do is now talk to our membership and see what doctors across this country think is the right thing to do. Once we've done that, we will then make a decision as to what we do next. But we are not taking anything off the table at this stage.
And already some junior doctors have considered their future.
Unfortunately, given the current climate within the NHS and the political situation, I've made a decision to resign my position within the NHS as a specialty registrar and leave the profession altogether.
I think it's very disappointing. I think it's very unfair on us because it's not like we have a different employer which we can go to and receive our training. So we're being stuck in a situation where we either leave the country or we continue with industrial action, which none of us want to do.
Trust Chief Executive Sir David Dalton, who was brought in by the government to try and resolve the impasse, yesterday wrote to Mr Hunt to say a stalemate had been reached. The letter that Sir David sent to Jeremy Hunt also contained the signatures of 19 other Trust Chief Executives. But as the day's gone on, that seems to have been unravelling at a rate of knots. Nearly half of those chief executives have told the Health Service Journal that while they thought the contract was fair, they did not support it being imposed. And some of them have now asked for their names to be removed. A number of the medical royal colleges have also expressed their alarm, dismay and disappointment. And tonight it was clear this fight is far from over. Since 5 o'clock, doctors have been gathering outside the Department of Health to express their feelings over the contract.
It's an extraordinary thing to be standing here in Whitehall in a demonstration which is now about 300 doctors, and you kind of think about the surgery, you think about the doctor talking to you as a patient, and here they are, angry but nevertheless very reasonably well behaved, and I'm joined by two in particular, Rachel and Roshana. Roshana, what is the mood in your hospital given what's happened?
Well, today a lot of us were watching Mr. Hunt's speech in the Commons, and I can tell you that there were tears and there was anger. It was a combination of both.
Rachel, where do you go from here? Because you now have to sign this contract.
I think that's what the Health Secretary would like, but I fear he has grossly underestimated our resolve. For us, our anger and our distress comes down to the last 6 months where this Health Secretary has smeared us, he has insulted us, and he has quite frankly lied to us over and over again.
That's strong language.
It is strong language, and it arises from the fact that we have looked at the lines he has peddled to the media, and we have compared them to the details of the contracts, which we are perfectly capable of understanding with our own brains and our intelligence.
He says your leaders, I mean the BMA, have basically, they went to ballot before there was any real discussion. Is that true?
All I can say as a grassroots doctor is this: we have been screaming from the rooftops to try and get him to listen to our heartfelt concerns that this contract is unsafe for our patients. I would love him to listen to those concerns rather than use them as a cheap political point to score against the BMA.
They've been chanting here, "Where are you, Jeremy?" What do you want to say to the Health Secretary?
I would like him to know that I think my colleagues feel that he has failed. He has failed our patients, he has failed the NHS, and he has failed the British public. And he may not mind failure, but we will not fail, and we will stand up for the safety of our patients.
I spoke to him just now about patient care. What damage is this going to do to the atmosphere between doctor and patient?
That atmosphere is now toxic. It is corrosive, the relationship between Jeremy Hunt and doctors. I think for us, I have no concerns about my relationship with my patients because our patients know that they can trust their doctors. Everything we do is about trust and the highest standards of professionalism. If Jeremy Hunt were put up before the GMC, I think there'd be a case for striking him off for his standards of probity.
I'm just going to ask a couple of doctors. Where do you go from here? What happens after this?
I think we have to unite as healthcare workers. This is a struggle for all healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, everybody. The government will come for us one at a time, so we have to stay united, and we mustn't accept this imposition.
You think this will spread to the nurses, will spread to the consultants?
There's no doubt about it. They're coming for the GP contract, they're coming for the consultant contract, they've already gone for the nurses' bursary. It's an attack on all staff. They want to reduce the wage bill and hand it over to the private sector. That's what's going on.
And then let's just see. What do you want from Mr. Hunt?
I want him to show up. He didn't even show up for the debate the other day. Where is he? What is he doing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's his job to be here, isn't it? His job to debate, and
Right.
he's not even the one doing the debate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, now, I did sit down with Jeremy Hunt a little earlier today. Let's take a listen to that. Secretary of State, in a sense, you've become something of a hate figure. How does that feel?
Well, it's never easy, but I think you have to also understand what the job of Health Secretary involves. Sometimes you have to speak out for quite difficult issues to do with patient care.
The problem here is that the poison that this whole process, which has been so badly handled, has kicked up, is now going to be itself damaging to patient care. And if patient care is your priority, you should have sorted this out in some other way.
Well, we have been trying to sort this out through a patient process of negotiation for the best part of 4 years. And in June, having won an election and it being in our manifesto to have a 7-day NHS, I again asked the BMA to sit round the table and discuss it. And they refused. And even before any discussions had happened, they balloted for strike action. And I think that is incredibly disappointing. And yes, that does leave some poison. And I think it's highly regrettable because I don't think that what I want is different to what any doctor in the NHS wants, which is to give the safest possible care to patients, to be able to promise every patient using the NHS that we're going to have the same high quality care every day of the week.
You said you'd done some new modelling today when you were in Parliament, and did you model the effect on the health service of doctors who leave, which will, even if, let's say, suppose it's 1% of junior doctors, that's 540 doctors You factored that in?
Well, I hope it doesn't come to that. And I think it's very important.
Well, it's going to if you impose this deal.
Well, I think it will depend on what people think when they actually look at what I've said. The contract that we are going to introduce is not the contract I originally wanted. Originally we talked about Saturday being treated completely as a normal day of the week. I said, actually, I'm going to impose the contract the NHS have told me after a long process of negotiation they think is fair and reasonable. So what I did was we started a negotiation saying that we have to sort out the problem of weekend rostering. We have to make it easier for hospitals to roster at weekends. We listened to what doctors were saying. We changed our position to try and reflect those concerns. In fact, we've changed it several times.
Right.
At no time in that process was the BMA prepared to move at all.
Right,
and
but
so
we are now where we are, and where we are is you having to impose this contract. What will you do if doctors don't sign the contract?
What I'm doing today is designed precisely to avoid that, because the decision I've taken, when you impose a contract as a Secretary of State, you could choose to do anything because you're saying that the negotiation process has failed. So I could have said Saturday is going to be treated exactly like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I didn't. I took a very reasonable position. This has been a position that's been backed by Simon Stevens, the head of NHS England, by respected chief executives.
Well, you say that, but of course several of the ones you named have actually tweeted that whilst they supported the deal, they did not support imposition.
What I didn't say, people have different views on imposition, but what I said was that these...
Well, imposition is what I'm asking you about.
But what I'm saying is these people have said that this was a fair and reasonable deal.
Right.
I think
then that takes us to the next question, because far more complicated is to try to negotiate with the consultants, who are utterly vital at the weekend, even more vital than the junior doctors who already do enormous numbers of hours beyond what they're paid for. Now, the consultants, are you going to impose that solution too?
Well, we've had much better discussions with the consultants, interestingly also represented by the BMA, but they have been willing to sit down and talk with us right from the start. We've actually made some very good progress in those discussions. So we'll have to see what happens.
How do you think it looks to the average health worker, indeed to the average user of the health service, that you're tough on doctors, but when it comes to Google, you're as soft as a potato?
Well, I don't think either of those statements are true. When it comes to...
Well, but one is provenly true. The Google thing is less good than Italy, less good than France, less good than practically any other European country who's done a deal with them.
Well, am I allowed to answer the question, John? Thank you. First of all, when it comes to doctors, I think what we've been is reasonable and fair, but we've also said that we need to deliver what we've wanted to do in our manifesto, which is to get rid of this weekend effect. When it comes to Google, we are the government that has said that tech companies must pay their fair share of tax. Now, whatever arrangements you come to, there will always be people who say it should be more.
Secretary of State, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, now, the two doctors I was talking to earlier, Rachel and Roshana, have been watching that interview. Rachel?
Well, I just heard Jeremy Hunt say that he wasn't being tough on doctors. I feel as though for the last 6 months he's been trampling all over me in hobnailed boots, and I feel as though his legacy now is going to be an NHS that has a mass exodus of junior doctors. He's driving us away from the profession we love, and he will be known as the Health Secretary who has lost a generation of young doctors.
Do you know anybody who's thinking about actually moving on and maybe taking a job in Australasia or somewhere?
I know many people who've already left and many people who are planning to leave. In fact, today I spoke to a consultant colleague who mentors junior doctors, and she said she's never seen so many junior doctors tell her.
And what did you make then of what Jeremy Hunt said?
I think it's astonishing. He's just admitted that he has not looked into the number of doctors who will likely leave with this contract. He's also seen that not one single person has come forward today and supported this imposition.
Roshana, Rachel, thank you both very much indeed.
Well, you can see that during the day that there has been a real sense of despair, frustration, anger about what's happened. In fact, just over your shoulder there are some more protesters coming up. As I came up here before, they were standing in the middle of the road. Now, can I just say, junior doctors are normally very polite, very law-abiding protesters, and I think that does give a sign of what's going on. What next? Over the next few days and over the weeks, the British Medical Association will look at whether they hold more industrial action, whether they ballot their members. There is also, I think, a real possibility of a legal challenge to this, whether it is from the BMA or whether it is from individual
Nodding heads
doctors
from the doctors behind you.
who may just take it into themselves to seek judicial review about whether you can actually impose a contract like this. I think there will be a lot more happening over the next couple of days or weeks.
I just mentioned that the faces of the police who were marshalling this crowd were, shall I say, more than tolerant.